Hey everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor and trauma therapist. Today we're going to talk about dissociation. And for those of you who are trauma survivors of like childhood abuse and neglect or sexual abuse, no doubt you have some experience with dissociation. This will be very helpful because we'll be going over what dissociation looks like. We'll go over depersonalization and derealization, which falls under dissociation. And we'll also talk about dissociative identity disorder. And then lastly, we're going to cover how to heal dissociation from an IFS lens. So for those of you who don't know, that's internal family systems therapy. That is the lens of which I use to treat my client population. I love it. It's such a wonderful and gentle way to heal trauma. And throughout the video, if you hear any snoring, I do apologize. I have all my pets with me and some of them do snore, including Tilly, my potbelly pig. Yeah, she's the worst culprit. So if you hear any snoring, I deeply apologize, but I will try to hopefully carry on regardless. Brings new meaning to the word pig in a blanket, eh? I can confirm, pigs do indeed like blankets. All right, without further ado, let's get started. All right, so what is dissociation? So dissociation is more than just, say, zoning out for a moment, like daydreaming, it's more than that. Essentially, it's a change in how your mind handles information, basically. And it causes you to feel disconnected from your thoughts, your emotions, your memories and surroundings and your environment. So it's a complete disconnect from these things. It can commonly cause a loss of memory and forgetting, and it can make you feel unreal or that your surroundings around you are unreal as well. So as you can see, dissociation is more than just kind of daydreaming or spacing out. It's higher up on that realm of just not being present. And commonly what I hear from trauma survivors is they don't have a lot of memories, especially of their childhood, for example. So there'll be lots of memory gaps where they might have some scattered memories, but they don't have what I could say is a cohesive narrative of this happened, then that, then this, then that. And that is because oftentimes a dissociative part or dissociation happened to be present a lot of the time in order for them to stay safe, right? It kept them just spaced out or zoned out so that they didn't have to experience what was going on and the terrible emotions associated with that. So it's very common with trauma survivors to have some level, if not a high level, of dissociation. Let's talk about trauma and the impact trauma has on dissociation. So childhood trauma, like physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, can be overwhelmingly emotionally distressing, and it can cause individuals to feel helpless and terrified. So basically, dissociation came on board when you were very young to help you stay safe and help your nervous system regulate in the only way it realistically could during times of overwhelming terror and stress from childhood abuse and neglect. So it kept your system safe by essentially shutting you down and helping you not be in the present moment. It's a form of escape, basically. So very, very common for dissociation to help any type of trauma survivor stay safe by just not being present, and essentially your mind is elsewhere. Okay, let's talk about depersonalization. So this falls under dissociation as well. The symptoms of depersonalization are that it alters your perceptions and it disconnects you from your own thoughts and feelings. You feel detached from your body. You can feel disconnected from your environment. Everything feels like unreal around you, and you have an unstable sense of self. Emotional and physical numbing can be present with this. And you feel as if you're watching yourself in a movie or like outside of yourself, like you're an outside observer. So that also is common with depersonalization. And it feels essentially like you're living in a dream. So yeah, hopefully that helps you understand depersonalization. Let's go on to the next. The next one is derealization, which has some commonalities with depersonalization as well. Again, your surroundings are going to feel like they are not real. You're going to feel like you're living in a movie. You'll have an emotional disconnect from those that you love. Your surroundings, for example, what's behind me might appear distorted, like blurry, warped, or colorless. So your actual environment will look distorted to you. And you can also have distortions of time. So, for example, recent events can feel like they happen way, way, way far back. So that is symptoms of derealization. And both of these can be present to a high degree in some of the dissociative disorders, which we will get to in just a minute. All right, let's talk about dissociative identity disorder. So I have treated a number of patients with this disorder. I actually love using IFS to treat this disorder, which I'll talk about after this slide. And it really is a fascinating disorder, completely born out of trauma and with a high degree of dissociation present that causes multiple personalities. It used to be called multiple personality disorder, but it causes multiple identities to occur at a very young age to help the child stay safe, essentially, from overwhelming abuse that might be happening in the environment. All right. So a person will have various identities that switch on and off depending on environmental triggers. I see this very, very commonly with my clients. So especially if there's some sort of trauma trigger that overwhelms the system, you'll see one distinct identity kind of take over the person and take them out of the present moment. And boop, there they go. They're essentially not connected anymore with the present moment as that identity takes over. And that identity is usually taking over to try to cope with whatever trigger had just happened. A person often has no awareness of other identities when they take over. I've seen this actually happen. The clients that have more awareness of their different identities are usually what I call more integrated. And so they will have more of an awareness of which identities are switching on and off. But those who have like a brand new diagnosis of DID and they've never had any type of mental health treatment before, typically their level of awareness of which identities are on board and when they take over and what causes them to take over is very low. But as a person begins their healing journey, they can definitely gain quite a bit of awareness of what their parts are, what causes them to switch on and off, and what they need to also heal and integrate too. All right, so these identities can have different likes and dislikes, different personalities. Their needs and feelings can be completely different than the actual host, the actual person. And their histories and stories and mannerisms can be completely different. They can have a different speaking voice and a way of dressing, etc., etc. So as you get an idea here, these personalities can be very, very distinct and different from one another, have different needs, feelings, perceptions, etc., and really will have their own way of protecting the client. All right, let's talk about some DID vocabulary now. So alters refers to the different identities. You can have at least one other alter, so that's two identities, or you can have quite a few. Every person has a unique number of alters, and it varies from person to person, really. Switching is when one alter switches out for another alter. So basically one identity taking over another. Switching, can last from seconds, minutes, hours, or even days. DID can cause headaches, amnesia, time loss, trances, or out-of-body experiences. A person with DID who does not have a solid sense of self, essentially, they don't know who they are as a person. So they're very, very fragmented. So there won't be a solid sense of self. So that's what we're working on in therapy. And over time, DID can heal, and these identities can be reintegrated into the host or the actual person. In the literature, oftentimes there's kind of a pessimistic view where they're like, DID really can't be healed, but actually I use IFS and I have seen some great results with it because IFS conceptualizes the different alters as parts. So DID and IFS shares this parts language in common, and IFS would say that we all have parts. And so what I like to say is that the only difference between, say, me, who doesn't have DID, is that my parts, I'm very aware of them, of, say, the people-pleasing part or the angry part or the part that it holds depression, for example. So I'm very aware of my parts. And the only difference between me and somebody who has DID, for example, is that the level of disassociation with a person with DID is much, much, much higher. So they lack the awareness and insight because the disassociation is so high. So it's really just a matter and degree of disassociation between a person without DID's parts and then somebody with DID. I hope that makes sense. We'll talk more about that in just a second when I get to the IFS slides. So yeah, essentially over time, what I have seen with my DID clients is as they gain more and more awareness of which alters they have and when they switch on and off and what the trauma triggers are, oftentimes the alters can be reintegrated. I've had clients who essentially went from of quite a wide variety of parts to just a few. So essentially parts got reabsorbed back into the host system as the person was feeling better and better to where maybe they only had a few now instead of, say, 10. So yeah, identities and alters can absolutely be reabsorbed, for lack of a better word, back into the host system as the person heals. So there's quite a bit of hope for this disorder as well. Let's get on to the next topic of IFS and parts and how we can heal disassociation. Healing disassociation with IFS. Let's go ahead and talk about this now. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with IFS, I have tons and tons of amazing videos on IFS on my channel. Feel free to browse around and take a look. Because I don't want to bog down this video with all the nitty-gritty details on IFS. But I can link a couple of videos below in the description as well to kind of get you started. But essentially, I'll just give the Cliff Notes version just to kind of get you started. IFS teaches that we all have an authentic true self and that trauma splits us off from our true self. And essentially what happens are different parts are born to help us stay safe. So say you were a child undergoing tremendous physical abuse, no doubt you would have parts that would disassociate, for example, to keep you safe, but also you might have parts, for example, that become people-pleasing parts that are just like fawn and please don't hurt me, and do everything you can to keep your abusive parent happy. You might have parts that hold a high degree of anger that are like the fight parts, like you're not going to treat me like this and I'm going to stand up for myself. So essentially your authentic true self is free from a high degree of emotional distress. I say true self is just this beautiful, clear center of you that's devoid of like judgment. It's devoid of very polarized thoughts and emotions. It's very calm and courageous and gentle and compassionate. It has good insight and clarity. So authentic self is this beautiful, like wise mind. And parts are not that. Parts were born to help you stay safe. Disassociation is one of those parts. So that's what we're going to talk about today to try to figure out from an IFS lens what you can do to help your system heal from a high degree of disassociation. So we're going to look at the job that disassociation does to keep you safe. We're going to look at its greatest fear. And then we're going to also look at the antidote. So how you can help the dissociative parts heal so that they don't do that same job or role to the high degree that they are doing anymore, which is causing your system distress. The job of disassociation was to keep you safe from extremely painful emotions that felt overwhelming. So very commonly what I see a lot of trauma survivors struggle with is experiencing any degree of emotional distress before essentially parts will shut it down. Really, the childhood abuse and neglect that was going on, and whatever that looked like in your unique family system, was so overwhelming, right? We're powerless as children. So oftentimes these parts were born out of that powerlessness to try to help you stabilize and stay safe in the only way it was realistically possible as a child. So disassociation for sure is one of those parts that protected from like overwhelmingly powerful emotions that you really couldn't cope with in the moment because you were a small, innocent child, and you didn't have anybody to protect you. Disassociation also helps you escape from reality. It helps to numb emotions and thoughts, for example. And the greatest fear of disassociation, or the part that is the dissociative part, is that if it allows you to experience any type of emotion, even in small amounts, that you will be completely overwhelmed and be unable to cope. So essentially, disassociation is one of the strongest protectors we have to prevent overwhelm in the system. And so I commonly see clients who are working on trauma that you can tell when they're disassociating because they will just, boop, they're just off in another world. And oftentimes as we touch into some deeper areas of trauma that hold a lot of distress from their childhood, boop, off disassociation goes and takes them away from the present moment. So helping them learn to stay present is very, very important. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. The antidote, or the way to heal disassociation using the IFS lens, is to restore trust in your wise, authentic self. So again, think of your wise, authentic self as the teacher who is in charge of a group of adorable kindergartners, right? And so you need this wise adult mentor teacher energy on board to be able to manage all the cute little kiddos. So a lot of our parts, I look at them as small children because really, again, this is born out of childhood trauma. A lot of them are very young versions of us at different ages. So I think of wise self as this beautiful teacher that has the wisdom and compassion and gentleness and nurturing ability to kind of corral all those cute little kiddos. So the antidote here is that we restore communication and trust between the dissociative part and your wise, authentic self, because authentic self knows how to lead the system and lead it very well. Parts do not. And oftentimes, again, there's a split between your parts and yourself, which is why it's so hard for the system to remain regulated, because there's not this beautiful, wise energy that's able to navigate life stressors. Instead, you just have parts that are taking over and helping in the only way they know how. So yeah, restoring trust in wise self allows the part to relax. You know, it recognizes it has a helper. It has a wise adult on board, so to speak, that can help run the system, and that it doesn't need to do its job or role anymore to the degree that it does. It can protect and reduce overwhelm, essentially, this wise adult self. We want to teach the part that feeling can be experienced very, very slowly and gradually. So disassociation is most definitely afraid of overwhelm. So you have to get the parts buy-in that we're not going to just fling the doors wide open and allow overwhelming emotions to just flood into the system, because that is terrifying, and people will not go there if they even for 1 second believe that overwhelm is going to happen. So what we do is we get the parts buy-in that we're just going to crack the door. Just going to crack the door. We'll let the little bit of distress in just a little bit at a time, and then the door can be shut again. And then later on, we'll open it again, let a little bit through, then you can shut the door again. And so we're teaching like emotional regulation and distress tolerance very, very gradually and gently, so that their system learns that it does have the capacity to cope with emotions without shutting down. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. I welcome any comments or questions below. I'll be doing additional parts from an IFS lens as well, so feel free to subscribe if you want more content that includes trauma and IFS. Again, it's my favorite treatment. I love it. And I so look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Thank you so much and take care. Bye, everybody.